Hello, you're watching The Mainstream. I'm Khushbu Soni, the founder of The Mainstream. Today on our episode of Marketers Unfiltered, we are joined by someone who's seen SaaS marketing evolve inside out, someone who's worked across product, partnerships, and brand. We have Nivas Ravichandran. He is heading marketing at SpendFlow, where he helps businesses save smartly on their SaaS spend. Before this, he was a core part of Freshworks, where he led multiple growth, product, and startup initiatives with 10 plus years of rich experience helping scale startup, working with Freshworks and brand like SpendFlow. Let's get deeper and double click on his journey and how he's really helped scale startups from ground to up. Thank you so much, Nivas, for joining us, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me, Khushbu, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Superb, Nivas. I'd also like to understand, like you mentioned in Freshworks, it was more of fresh sales and fresh services a product, which is more of your marketing and sales personas, right? Now, once it is SpendFlow, it's more of finance personas. It has, I'm sure it is very challenging when people to different kind of persona profiles in a SaaS position. What was the significant difference that you've seen when, talking to sales, marketing, finance personas? And of course, IT is an overarching crop, right? They still own it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with respect to sales and marketing, they're very willing to learn new tech. They're always in search for new tech. And also the willingness to learn a lot of small things is there because they're always on the drive towards getting more sales, getting more leads, getting more. There's never a dearth of getting enough results, right? And in terms of and also another thing that we realized is because we were catering to a lot of the SMEs, most of them did not have necessary playbooks in place for their company. And we did a lot of webinars for sales, individuals as well as leaders, and the learning over there was very well appreciated, right? Like they were able to also different time periods, right? Like that was 2016 where webinars were always on the rise. Over here, we're very conscious about what type of content you want to consume, right? Like today with YouTube, with Instagram, like more of the short form content taking over, we've been very picky about what type of content. So back then it was learning was content towards learning was always kept at a very higher importance, and the willingness to try out tools was higher, and very little friction, right? Like because if you see even today's marketing stack or the tech stack, MarTech overall stack is massive. But if you take the flip side of finance, right? Finance is very risk averse, right? Like they don't want to mess up with if you take a look at finance tools, very few of them are actually product led, right? Because they're always worried about why do I want to immediately sign up and give out my company's financial data? They're very, very cautious about that. Very few tools, right? And also it is difficult for us to capture them primarily on, let's say, Google Ads, or they're not going to click on an ad, subscribe for something and just try out the product or buy, right? They're a very high trust ecosystem. They speak to each other. They're very risk averse. They're not willing to come on webinars or podcasts that easily. Like back then at Freshworks, I used to drive a webinar series, and getting sales leaders as webinar speakers is very easy, right? Because they're always willing to showcase themselves. They're willing to share their learnings as long as they're not revealing too much. And there were also a lot of sales influencers, right? In the finance segment, again, just going by the same points that I'd mentioned, it's very difficult for you to drive in terms of content creation, in terms of bringing them it's probably the same for CIOs as well to some extent. CIOs are at least pretty willing to try out new tech, that the missing out part is higher and they want to try out new tech. But finance will probably be a little more risk averse. Even from an AI standpoint, from some of the dinners that we posted in the US, what we've noticed is they are aware of all the things that are happening, but there is still a little bit of inhibition towards trying out different tools. And what if this data is, where is my data being put? What is happening? Who else is being trained on with this data? Right? And those are questions that are there where it's still, I wouldn't say this one's easier, that one's difficult. Neither of them are. I think the competition in the sales and martech space is a lot higher, and the churn slash attrition from a user standpoint is also very high. Finance, if they decide on something, they're going to stick with it. The churn is lower, and they're gonna build it. What will they like?
Very, very nicely said. And I think when you have a finance person giving a confidence on your product, he nailed it. That I mean, then like you said, the churn being through is not really cool. Very nice to put. And I think today organizations, the tech solution companies are, focusing a lot on influencing finance as well, to kind of tell them that, okay, this is the kind of ROI that we're going to bring in, but it's very hard to crack. I think that persona of the file is very hard to crack. And I can see it like when Santo has been doing a great work in connecting and also building a whole community around it, right? Did you see a need of marketing today going beyond one step of not just talking product features, white papers, report, to look at more of, community build approach to bring people together to share what's happening in tech and then, do that. You see that as a need?
I see it in two formats, right? Like one, primarily because AI has driven a lot of automation from a sales and martech standpoint, and the number of cold emails / cold calls that we receive has significantly increased, right? But the tools also, the differentiation from a code standpoint is diminishing, right? All of them look the same. Very rarely can I differentiate one tool versus the other and pinpoint saying, oh my God, this is a great tool versus this is not a great. Unless and until you try, go and implement it, at least spend like 3 to 6 months, right? So I think a lot of buying today happens via trust, and they're going to speak to each other. They're going to at least check with their peers before going and implementing. Like majority of these tools are also like a fairly larger implementation period, especially in the mid-market and the enterprise segment. Because you have to turn the entire company around for you to be able to implement it, which is not directly, it is not easy for them to go and switch, right? The cost of change is significantly high, because of which I think they go with trusted recommendations. And over here, building a community of peers that actually appreciate and are willing to just trust your brand and trust your product is a significant game changer in today's game.
Absolutely. Okay, great. This is excellent insight. Now, tell us, you worked in various markets. You've done India. Now you're also catering to US, UK. What is the consumer behavior cycle? Like what the personas and the people that customers basically that we interact with seats in India versus the other international. What is the typical buying pattern, or what is the whole pattern of customers responding to even marketing materials and channels to which the marketers reach out and reach out? What are your observations in that?
Yeah, I think I'll first probably talk about the US versus the India market, right? Because we initially used to focus on India as well from a control standpoint, and we moved out and we said we'll focus primarily on the US and the UK market. From a US standpoint, I think what we've realized is the willingness to adopt new tech is significantly higher, and also they're fine with a self-serve motion, right? Like where they'll go try out a lot of things and they're willing to implement it, and very less hands-on support needed. Whereas in India, it is a very given thing where, because also of the cost of employment, right? India is primarily known for throwing people at problems, where the cost of software is always equated to the cost of an employee that they could potentially hire, right? Be it, like, let's say, financial plan, be it forecasting, be it any tool, right? Like, or let's say it could be potential say, a revenue composition software, or it could be a project. In India, they'd be like, hey, can we have another person to track this, right? Only in India can you find a person who's sitting nearby a toll booth and pressing the button, right? Like in the US, this would never happen because of the cost of living and things like that. So in the US, they'd want software. They'd want the willingness to pay for software is way higher.
Yeah.
And they, as long as it shows them value, they're very happy about it. And in the UK, I think the one thing that I've noticed is they're slightly more careful about privacy. They care a lot about data. They care a lot about that. That's where they probably expect a lot of privacy policies in place before you go and sell to that market. And also, apart from the UK, right, Europe as a continent, I think prefers to buy from local vendors. And that is one of the reasons why you see a lot of the global companies will have regional offices set up in each of the countries, right? Though they're smaller markets, they do cater to them very locally, right? We do not cater to non-English languages at the current juncture, because of which we kind of restrict ourselves to UK and probably English-speaking Europe. But otherwise, we'd mostly, that is who we would cater to. I think the other thing that I've noticed is in India, again, because of the cost of employment, the willingness to pay for software is a little lesser, right? They'd be like, okay, I'll just hire a person to solve this rather than willingness to pay for software. Yeah.
Sure. And in terms of, go to market, right? Of course, I mean, in India, there are certain channels we know definitely work.
Yeah.
May not necessarily work, say, in the East, in UK, in other ASEAN countries, or even for that matter in the US. You extensively worked for US and UK market. Tell us, what in terms of channels that you see today works, and also what do you anticipate for the coming years also will not fade away, for example?
I think in the US, WhatsApp is not a thing, right? Like majority of them do not really use WhatsApp, right? So they're still on their Apple messages. iMessage is a big deal there. Email is still very much like at least people from the who were born in the 80s and 90s, right? Who are today finance leaders or like again, I'm not going to age them by saying that, but what we've noticed is email is still very much a channel. LinkedIn is a good channel. They like to separate their work from their personal. In India, that very rarely happens, right? People don't see the difference, right? Even like, for example, you can host an event in India over the weekend and expect people to show up. But in the US, they prioritize families a lot more. Not that in India people do not, but they're willing to, that hunger is slightly higher in terms of just going to events, networking. You'll see people showing up over the weekends, whereas in the US, they prioritize families and they'd want to appear, they want to be there for the family.
In India, I mean, if anyone want to do an event, Friday evenings are best. I'm not sure we got out even yet.
So Friday, like I think we've typically restricted ourselves to doing it on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Friday evening over here, if it depends on who's hosting it, what is happening, and all of those things, right? If it is, I mean, again, post-COVID is a very different world, right? Half the people don't work from office on Fridays anymore. And driving back, especially in a city like Bangalore or in Mumbai, that matter, is significantly harder, and people just want to leave off at 4 p.m. They don't want to show up. I think that is we're seeing that in India as well. Like, I mean, it's changing, right? Earlier, it used to be a lot more over the weekends, but now it's happening during the weekdays. We are seeing that shift happen towards. Also, maybe because there are a lot of companies that cater to the global markets, not necessarily to India catering to India.
Sure, yeah. Lovely. Great. Tell us, I mean, you've been part of the whole go-to-market planning at Spentflow, having a team who helps you in all the activations of these. I'm sure you work with a lot of partners. I because I'm an ex-marketer and I've kind of dealt with it myself. And I always ask this question still because I feel this is something which has not gone away. That in the beginning of the year, we sit down with the entire leadership team, plan our go-to-market strategy. What is the vision? What is that we want to achieve in this year? Numbers, brand positioning, etc. But as quarter go by, based on the market dynamics, market response, industry response, a lot of shifts happen. And so one is how challenging is that to really make sure that let's rebuild, let's do the whole thing, let's do the whiteboarding.
Yeah.
Is getting your team to really make sure that they are understanding why the change, and also sales supporting the whole business, the revenue generation team. Supporting to make sure that, hey, we are in this together and, you can't just tell me this is what you need and then, walk off. So really having that support from the team as well, both sides, to get that vision published every quarter by quarter.
Absolutely.
Is that a challenge still, or you named it?
I think the first time you do it is always like you take it by thought, right? When this was like, let's say all the way to 2021, till everything was very green in the SaaS ecosystem from a public market standpoint. People used to go with annual budgets, not many questions asked, growth at all costs. All of that was great, right? Yeah. But then I think once things started shifting towards, how do you build efficiency? How do you build closer toward profitability? How do you ensure every revenue that you bring in is not just any type of revenue, good revenue versus bad revenue? All of these things are being measured very closer today. And I think that's a very relevant, needed thing, right? I think it's not easy, but I think this is reality today, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is probably, I'm not even going to call it the new normal. This is the normal, right? You're going to have, if you're still stuck in annual planning and just operating within annual operating plan, I think you're not iterating enough within the quarter. I think you can start off with like doing a half yearly operating plan and then have like relevant checks at every quarter. And especially because if you have to commit to certain like larger things, right? Like I think now businesses, both vendors as well as both software, have started, are more willing to adapt to half yearly commits, some of them, right? And where you're able to tell them saying, hey, you know what, some of the software, majority of the software would say annual commits, right? But at least like service providers are willing to do the half of the quarter, right? And give them the realistic thing saying, hey, these are relevant milestones. Make them co-own goals with you, right? I think that has significantly shifted, where it is not just about, if you're going to work with an SEO agency and just going to be like, oh my God, traffic, right? That's the last thing that you want to do in 2025, especially with like generative engine optimization taking over, right? You have to look at it almost every month. I think thankfully me and my CFO have a pretty good relationship over there, and I think I align with him on a lot of things. I've heard like so many of those CMO CFO conflicts out there on LinkedIn, and as well as I think you are partners in this, right? When he says, hey, budget's cut, he means business, right? He or she means business, right? It is not against you. It is for like, if the ship sinks, he's the first person to be pointed. He or she is the first person to be pointed, right? So you can, like, marketing can go on and spend, and if you're not able to necessarily drive the right ROI. I'd written a LinkedIn post about this some time ago. Because like sales will come and ask you for more revenue, right? They got more pipeline. And I will have to go and ask my finance leader for more budgets. And this was happening. And then my finance leader actually brought up this very interesting point. He said, you know what? If I'm going to give you that budget, sales will hit their numbers. You will hit your numbers, but the business might not hit that, right? Like we want to operate at a particular efficiency. That rang or did well, right? It's not about individual teams winning. It's about the company winning, right? Like with the right metrics. I think that changed the way I started looking at things, right? Like now, if my sales comes and asks for more, it's like, hey, how are we doing from a conversion standpoint? And then I go in as well and look at it from a lead to opportunity or lead to a sale standpoint.
Right.
Obviously, there's always area of improvement, right? Like I'm not going to say, oh, we've nailed it, right? But then it's just going and looking at your existing things a lot more deeper rather than just going to be like, oh, I need more bugs, I need more bugs. But this is not the only answer today to solve all sorts of problems. It just throws in more problems.
Do you see a difference in pivoting to your GTM operations more often in India versus when pivoting to US, or in US they say, okay, hey, I know this is the plan, or is it the same?
Definitely not. I think what works for 3 months or 6 months doesn't necessarily have to work, right? Like there's a lot of seasonality in almost every channel and every behavior that we've seen. If someone's really figured it out, I think they'd already be like $1 billion revenue company, which companies are probably, and I think also you need to really look at where does it cap out or where does it plateau, right? Each channel for that matter. If you're going to rely on one channel, right? I'll give you an example. There are companies who will depend on like particular traffic or inbound, right? And we've seen, like, I think this is all over the internet today. There are companies which have, even like for a company like HubSpot, right? Which like probably discovered inbound as the keyword and probably built their business around that. We've seen traffic drop significantly happen to them. I feel very bad for marketers who are just building around traffic or who promised traffic to the leadership. And if the leadership doesn't necessarily understand why it is dropping and are just blaming it on the marketer, saying, oh, this person took over and traffic dropped, it's not a great place to be, right? I think it's also important for the marketer to set their expectations with the leadership and sales. We'll think, hey, you know what? Why do we care about traffic? If we have the right conversion metrics, the bottom of the funnel is right, then you just focus on the right metric. You don't focus on the vanity metric. Similarly, I think each channel has been changing, right? What worked this quarter necessarily need not work for you the same way. You build some level of predictability around that. It cannot obviously just tilt over entirely, right? You build some level of predictability and momentum, and sometimes you pray to the rain gods.
True. Awesome. And, I mean, no conversation goes and without talking about the big fire, which is AI. Tell us, have you seen a significant change after, have you started using AI in marketing, and have you seen that change? What are some of the use cases, if you have any, in marketing? Is it helping? What do you think, how will AI evolve in marketing in the coming years?
I think if someone's not using AI today, I think they're probably keeping under a rock. In what format or in what level is the more fundamental question? There is obviously a lot of FOMO around because the space is growing so fast, it's actually difficult to keep up. But I think what it has done really, really well is enabled non-designers to become designers. It's enabled non-product marketers to become product marketers. It's enabled even like marketing leaders who plan out like budgets and things like that to become better at it, right? But I think the fundamental piece is the context, right? I think AI is a lot about garbage in, garbage out, right? If you do not have the necessary context, it's going to throw out garbage. But then I think at least what we have done with FemFlow, with a lot of things, right? We've been able to, what took us like multiple hours, been brought down significantly. And I think like even from a design, like a blog design standpoint, or it could be a video creation standpoint, or it could be product marketing, sales enablement collateral. It could be our outbound emails or even LinkedIn posts, as basic as that, right? It's enabled a lot of people within my company to be able to write LinkedIn posts more confidently, right? And anyone who was afraid of writing good emails is now enabled with AI in different formats to write better emails. It starts off at a very fundamental level. You can also build very complex workflows. You can build we've done a couple of things within the company to be able to automate certain more monotonous tasks which we can typically save time on, or also needs a little bit of the developer experience and things like that. Right? There's some I think there's a lot of relevance to what we do from an event standpoint. We've found out like a couple of use cases which we can solve. It's used to take up like 3 hours to put together like a particular, say, like a collateral for the event. Today it is probably 7 minutes. Right?
Yeah.
So different things. I think it just boils down to your creativity on how you're gonna apply it. And today, putting together like very basic things like small tools, and this is just in the hands of like good tools like say Cursor or Lovable or some of these.
Sure.
Yeah.
Superb. Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question. This is interesting. I have one question to you. If it's very difficult for any person to, accept working for a startup because it comes with a huge responsibility, especially in marketing, right? Brand building, budgets, performance marketing, revenue generation, right? Content creation, brand positioning. Like everything needs equal attention. And today I see, if not everybody would, unless that was shifted, we've been seeing people opting more for, legacy brands because there, that at least the brand is taken care of, right?
Yeah.
They don't have to focus on brand building.
Right.
But if you scale the brand from here to the next level, right? Like $1 billion business, then again, it's a journey, right? And you've been part of that journey. So it's a different feel, it's a different experience. But to give someone a comfort to know that it's not difficult to really work to startup. You just need to kind of put your right. And of course, the challenge is everywhere today, but with startup, you just need to prioritize your bucket. How would you do that? Like, if you were to tell someone, who is keen to evaluate joining a startup, a SaaS startup, for example, very specifically, what is that they should prioritize in their GTM motion?
I think I'm not going to sell joining a startup, right? Like honestly, I've told this before on one of my previous podcasts as well. Joining a startup is like a self-selecting process.
Yeah.
You opt in.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of chaos. Yeah. There's a lot of uncertainty. But it comes with end-to-end visibility, end-to-end learnings, right? You are obviously trading your time for the learnings. And if things go well, you're able to achieve two things, right? Like an accelerated career, which I've been thankful to Freshworks as well as Spentflow, because I think Spentflow put me on the driver's seat. All three of my co-founders, been very fortunate that they said, hey, you know what, go drive it, right? Like I've not sold to finance in the past, right? So I think having good leaders who back you in difficult times, right? Like in the good times, everyone does. In difficult times, I think that's fundamental. I think for you, when you're joining a startup, right, you're always going to have 100 things broken, right? And also when you scale a particular company, right? Like I've had this scenario even at Spentflow, as well as Fresh Sales in my previous experience, where I was probably like marketer number 1/2 at Fresh Sales, and someone joined us a year later, right? And they said, how come you've not set these things up? I was like, look, we were running it for the first year doing all these other things. Right? Second year, someone else joins and they'll be like, oh, wait, why are all of these things broken, right? Third year, someone else joins and they'll be like, why are some of these things broken? I think what I realized, right, that earlier I used to feel very guilty about it, where I'd be like, oh my God, why haven't we fixed this? And I used to worry so much about it. But now what I've started realizing is at any given point of time, there's going to be like a lot of things broken. What do you want to prioritize, right? What's going to drive the needle is the more fundamental thing. And today we realized, hey, you know what? A lot of things are broken. Is very much broken at Spentflow. But then we're like, okay, is this going to move the needle? This is what we want to worry about today, right? Or is it for another bit? Or can we live with it, right? If we can, Let's just live with it. Let's not touch it, right?
Yeah.
If it's working, don't touch it, right? Unless and until we need to scale it drastically, where we have to rebuild the entire be it the system, right? Like be it the process, be it everything. It is very hard for you to arrive at it. I think for junior marketers, right, this is one thing that I would really recommend. Do not restrict yourself to marketing. I think that's a fundamental one mistake that I see a lot of marketers make is they care primarily only about their function or what they do. Right? I think if you don't understand how the business functions, if you're in a SaaS company and if you do not know what your average deal size is, how long does it take to close? Who's your persona? What is your ICP? What is the average contract value? What is the lifetime value of a particular customer? Then you're just doing a lot of spray and pray.
Yeah.
If you understand a lot of these metrics, what are the top 5 metrics the CEO cares about? Half the times you actually go and ask the CEO this question, they'd love to share this with you, right? They'd be like, oh my God, someone finally cares about this, right? But then if you're just worried about, oh, I drove so many likes, I drove so many views, that is not what the CEO really, really cares about, right? So again, it might not be aligned, right? Like where you might not be able to contribute to that number I thought, right?
Yeah.
But then what piece of the puzzle are you contributing to in that larger thing? Girish from Freshworks, right? I mean, I want to say CEO, but then past CEO and co-founder said this very beautifully. Like you can see it as like, I mean, when you're probably carving a stone, that you can see that you're carving a stone, or you can see it as if you're building a beautiful temple, right? So where do you fit in? And what is that larger picture? Which at a startup you get a lot more, right? Because you get to see the entire, if something that you do, and that was my itch when I moved from Freshworks to Spencer as well, where we did a bunch of things that worked very well. We did a bunch of things that did not work at Freshworks. But then the question on, hey, was it we who were driving this, or was it because of Freshworks, the larger brand itself, right? Like, we were like, are we really good marketers? And that sort of question kind of kicks in. And then you're like, okay, let me go tear up some of my learnings. Why don't I start from scratch, right? And when you have the opportunity, sometimes it comes knocking, sometimes you go knock at it, right? And then it's a self-correction process. Over there, you cannot go and complain saying, oh my God, there's so much work. Oh my God, I don't have a work-life balance. You went and picked a startup. You can go and work at no offense, but a large IT company and have a very relaxed job, right? You wanted a higher pay. Technically, startups, give you a better pay than most of the IT companies. You wanted learnings. You picked and you did a self-selection process. You go for it, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to go scuba diving and then be like, no, I'm going to be on the surface, no, then you should go swimming at a goddamn swimming pool and not be scuba diving.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, what a lovely conversation and so much of insights into me. Nivas, I have a small segment and I call this out as a rapid fire. I'm going to be asking you some questions, and whatever comes first in your mind is what I and my viewers would like to hear.
Sure.
So, yeah, very quick one. Okay, I can.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Let's
right.
see. I mean, yeah.
Awesome. One SaaS brand, apart from your just Templo, whose marketing you admire?
I think, yeah, this is a tough one. I have a lot of them. I have a lot of respect for this company called Ahrefs, which is like an SEO platform. They do pretty good marketing. Their CMO, his name is Tim Solo. Solid guy. I've met him a couple of times. Very lean team that has a phenomenal product, and they do very good marketing. I think a lot of product marketing, a lot of user-based marketing. They do a very good job at it. Tim is a very nice marketer that I have a lot of respect for.
Yeah, okay. The weirdest DM you've ever received after a LinkedIn post.
Okay. After a LinkedIn post, I can tell you what is the weirdest LinkedIn message was. Someone tried selling me an apartment in Bangalore, right? Because I was there for an event or something like that. And they were like, so it looks like you're a marketer based in Bangalore. Where this is a real estate company. And I'm like, whoa, you just open up. And I think, I also got invited by webinar by a hotel group, right? And I was like, hey, why do you guys have to do a webinar, right? I mean, this is because COVID, they didn't have anything else to do. They were like,
Right.
we don't have anything else to market. So we're like, well, I'm like, so what are you really selling over here? Right? So that was the two bizarre things that I've encountered.
If you weren't a marketer, you'd be?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think I'd be a sales.
A productivity hack or a guilty pleasure that always works.
Okay, so I'm a huge fan of something called the micro milestones or the mini milestones, right? I love to build processes rather than just trying to go for the end goal. Right? If you know that, so I have this habit of almost on a daily basis, I have it today as well as I sometimes try writing it out because of the admin. And I write down very small things, right? Like even if I want to build a habit of say 24 liters of water, I'll break it down into say 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5 and write it down 8 times. It's okay. It feels like a little bit of a time waste, but then I love it when I've completed say 1 liter, right? Like I go tick it twice or I go highlight it twice.
Yeah.
Or probably so to do is I'll probably break it down. Even if I want to build the habit of walking 10,000 steps a day, I probably break it down into 500 steps into 20 of them.
Right.
So that I know, okay, I've at least made like 6,000 steps. It doesn't feel like 0 or 1. It feels like, hey, there is progress on a daily basis. Yeah, I love that habit.
Nice. What's one marketing buzzword you wish we all stop using?
Marketing buzzword. I think the word GTM engineering right now is becoming a little bit of an overkill. I think everyone should technically be a GTM engineer. If they're not, which I think it will lead to that. And I think it was how growth hacking was kind of like during like probably 2013, 2014. Growth hacking used to be the coolest word. Every marketer called themselves the growth hacker. No one knew what growth hacker meant. Like, I mean, apart from all of the other things. Now GTM engineering feels like that. Obviously, it's equivalent to a RevOps person who knows, or probably someone who's very good at tools. He can orchestrate a bunch of things. But I think every marketer has to technically become that, right? So maybe it is the rise of something, but then it just feels like very over orchestrated and over engineered.
Awesome. This was great, Nivas. Thank you so much for joining me on the mainstream and having this wonderful conversation with you. Personally, I love a lot because we're expanding to the international market. It's so much of learning for me.
Right. Yeah.
Really plan what I should do there. So
no, thank you so much for having me. We've known each other for like about quite a couple of years now. And it's always been a pleasure working with your team. And it's great to, I mean, there are very few, honestly, marketing podcasts, finally, for SaaS as well. And it's good to be some of them and be willing to share some of our learnings.
Thank you so much. That is all.
Awesome. Thank you so much.